Story: A broken-legged dog begged for help. What baby did next brought tears to all. Scene 1. The Storm and the Cry. The storm came without warning. Winds howled, lightning cracked the sky open, and rain slammed against the roof of Grace Wilson's small home like pellets of glass. Inside, 5-year-old Noah sat cross-legged on the living room floor, carefully stacking wooden blocks into what he proudly called a supercastle. Grace, cooking chicken soup in the kitchen, called out, "Dinner in 15 minutes, sweetheart." Noah didn't respond. Instead, his hand froze mid-air. Something outside had caught his attention. He stood, his dinosaur pajamas trailing along the floor, and moved to the living room window. He pressed his tiny palms to the glass, eyes wide. "What is it, honey?" Grace asked, walking toward him with a dish towel in hand. Noah's breath fogged the window. "Someone's crying," he whispered. At first, Grace only heard the storm's fury, but then, between thunderclaps, a faint, broken whine. It was subtle, but unmistakable, the sound of something in pain. "It's probably just the wind," she said automatically.
"No, Mommy, someone's out there and they're hurting."
Scene 2. The Cry in the Rain. Grace hesitated. The responsible choice would have been to wait for morning, to call animal control when the storm had passed. But Noah's tear-filled eyes were locked on hers, filled with such raw compassion that her resolve broke. She grabbed her raincoat. "Stay inside, I'll check. Just a quick look." Outside, the wind pushed against her like a living thing. Rain soaked her in seconds. She turned on her phone's flashlight and called into the dark.
"Hello, is anyone there?"
A whimper answered, louder this time. She swept the beam across the yard and froze. Lying at the edge of the driveway was a large German shepherd. Mud covered its matted fur. Blood streaked its chest and leg. One front leg was bent at a sickening angle. Its amber eyes locked with hers. It didn't move, didn't growl, only let out a quiet, broken cry. Grace's heart cracked.
Behind her, Noah's voice broke the moment. "Mummy, did you find who was crying?"
Scene 3. A Name in the Silence. "Noah, I told you to stay inside!" Grace spun around, but the boy had already ducked under her arm, stepping toward the injured dog. "Noah, stop! He could be dangerous!" But Noah didn't pause. He moved slowly, carefully. The German shepherd watched him, alert but unthreatening.
"It's okay," Noah whispered, kneeling. "We're going to help you."
The dog's tail thumped once against the pavement. "We have to help him," Noah said firmly, as "he's really hurt." Grace stared between her son and the dog. The rain was freezing, the wind cutting, but she saw something in that moment, a quiet exchange between boy and beast that pushed her fear aside. She grabbed a beach towel from inside and knelt beside the dog. "We're going to help, but you have to let us." The dog sniffed her fingers, then gave a weak lick. Together, Grace and Noah slid the towel beneath his body and slowly dragged him toward the porch. Each movement drew a soft whimper. Then, just as they crossed the threshold into the warm house, Noah whispered, "His name is Max." Grace paused. "How do you know that?" "He told me," Noah said. He just did." Scene 4. The Name Behind the Whimper. Inside, the house was quiet, but the storm still howled beyond the windows. Max lay on the rug, shivering. Grace covered him with Noah's blue blanket while her son curled beside him, one small hand resting on the dog's heaving side. She tried calling emergency vets, but no one could reach them until morning. The roads were flooded. They were on their own. "I'll stay with him," Noah said calmly. "He needs us." Grace stared at him, this little boy who somehow wasn't afraid. "What did you mean about the bad man?" she asked softly. "The one who hurt Max's leg," Noah said. "But he's safe now." Grace's phone rang. It was Daniel. He was stranded. The bridge was out. He wouldn't be home tonight. Just the three of them, a boy, a mother, and a broken dog. And somehow Grace didn't feel alone. Scene 5. A Shadow at the Window. Later that night, Grace dozed in the armchair. Max curled beside Noah. A sudden jolt. She woke. Noah was sitting up, eyes wide.
"Someone's outside," he whispered.
Max's ears perked. A low growl built in his chest. Grace peered through the curtain. Lightning flashed. A figure stood at the edge of the porch, still, watching. Then the doorknob turned. Grace backed away and grabbed her phone, fingers shaking. She whispered to the dispatcher, "Someone's trying to break in." She realized with a jolt, the back door. Had she locked it? She ran. Deadbolt unlocked. As she twisted it closed, the knob turned from the other side. For a terrifying second, she and the intruder fought over the lock. She won. A crash from the living room sent her racing back. It wasn't the intruder. It was Max. He had dragged himself across the floor, his broken leg dangling, now snarling toward the back hallway. Noah stood beside him, hand resting on the dog's head. "It's him," the boy said calmly. "The bad man. Max knows him." Scene 6, The Protector. The man ran. They heard the footsteps splash through puddles, then the slam of a car door, and finally, the roar of an engine peeling away into the storm. Grace ran to the front window just in time to see taillights disappearing into the night. "I think he's gone," she said breathlessly into the phone. "The officers are 5 minutes out," the dispatcher responded. "Stay where you are. Keep the doors locked." She dropped the phone and turned to find Noah kneeling beside Max again. The dog was shaking, his injured leg trembling from the effort it had taken to rise and defend, but his eyes were clear, alert, and fixed on Noah.
"Oh, Max," Grace whispered, crouching beside him. "You shouldn't have moved. You're hurt."
"He had to," Noah said, gently stroking the dog's head. "He came to us to protect us, remember?" Before Grace could reply, red and blue lights flashed across the windows. 2 officers burst through the front door, weapons drawn. They quickly swept the house and checked the perimeter. The only evidence left behind were muddy footprints on the back steps and a single, unscrewed porch bulb. "Could be a random break-in," one officer said, "or someone watching your house. It's storm season. Criminals look for vulnerable homes, Bunty."
"But how would he know my husband wasn't home?" Grace asked, voice unsteady.
The officer shrugged. "People post things online, or someone's been watching for days." Grace's stomach turned. The second officer knelt by Max. "Looks like he took a hit, too," he murmured, examining the dog's twisted leg. This doesn't look like an accident. It looks like someone did this to him." Noah's voice cut through the room, quiet but certain. "It was the bad man. He hurt Max because Max saw him." The officers looked at the boy. Their eyes then slowly turned toward the German shepherd, who, despite his injuries, hadn't taken his gaze off Noah. Scene 7. Whispers in the Dark. Later that night, after the officers had left and the house had returned to silence, Grace sat at the kitchen table staring at her cold cup of tea. Her mind reeled, not just from the attempted break-in, but from what Noah had said. Max knows him. She glanced toward the living room where Max now lay on a makeshift bed of blankets. Noah sat beside him, gently brushing the dog's fur with the careful touch of someone tending a fragile treasure.
"Noah," she said quietly, sitting beside him. "What did you mean when you said Max saw the bad man?"
Noah didn't look up. "Max showed me." "Showed you? How?" He finally met her eyes, his gaze calm, like he was explaining something simple. "It's like dreaming. But while I'm awake, Max puts pictures in my head. Feelings, too. That man, he was the one who hurt Max. He chased him with something shiny, like metal. Max ran away through the woods. He was trying to find someone." Grace felt a chill creep over her. "Someone like us?" Noah nodded. "He said I would understand. He said we were safe." Grace wanted to dismiss it, to chalk it up to a child's imagination. But there was something about Noah's tone, the way Max looked at him, like he understood every word.
"Sweetheart," she whispered, "how did you know his name was Max?"
Noah smiled faintly and placed a hand on Max's massive paw. "Because he told me that first night. He showed me his name, just the word Max, like it floated in my head." Grace stared at the two of them, boy and dog, curled together on the floor, and felt the lines between logic and the impossible begin to blur. Something deeper was at work here, something neither science nor reason could explain. But somehow, she didn't feel afraid. She felt safe.
They were meant to find each other,
Scene 8. The investigation deepens. The next morning, sunlight filtered through rain-streaked windows. Grace was making coffee when a knock echoed from the front door. Daniel, just home from being stranded overnight, opened it to find Detective Morgan standing with another officer and a woman in a green vet jacket. "Morning," Morgan said. "Sorry for the early visit. We need to follow up on last night and have someone here to check on Max." The woman stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Patel, the department's on-call emergency vet." Noah was already at Max's side, gently stroking his fur. As Dr. Patel knelt to examine the German shepherd, Max barely flinched. She frowned at the twisted leg and bruises. "These wounds, they're not accidental. His leg was likely fractured by blunt force, deliberately. Some of these cuts look like defensive injuries." Grace looked to Detective Morgan, alarmed. "You mean someone beat him?" Morgan nodded gravely. "It's consistent with abuse cases, and we might know who." He handed Grace a printed photo. A man in his 60s stood beside a younger, healthier version of Max. "Retired Officer Thomas Fletcher," Morgan said, "reported missing yesterday. Neighbors called it in when he didn't come outside for 2 days. His dog, Max, was missing too." Grace's hand trembled as she looked at the picture. "This is him. This is Max. We believe Max witnessed something," Morgan continued. "Something bad. Fletcher's home showed signs of a struggle. We're treating it as a homicide." Daniel leaned forward. "You think Max saw the killer?" "More than that," Morgan said. "Last night's break-in, if it was connected, someone wanted to make sure Max couldn't tell anyone what he saw." Noah, silent until now, looked up.
"He doesn't have to talk," the boy said quietly. "He shows people things if they listen."
The room went still. Morgan studied Noah for a long moment, then turned to Grace. "Mom, I need to speak with you both, privately." Grace knew in that moment that their lives were about to change again. Scene 9. The unspoken truth. In the quiet of the kitchen, Detective Morgan sat across from Grace and Daniel. His notebook lay untouched beside his coffee. His gaze flicked it between them, hesitant. "I'll get right to it," he said. "What your son said about Max showing him things, that's not the first time I've heard something like it." Grace frowned. "You've heard of dogs showing images?" Morgan exhaled slowly. "Fletcher kept a journal. We found it at his home. He wrote extensively about Max's behavior, how the dog would anticipate things before they happened, react to people he shouldn't know. Toward the end, he believed Max was developing a kind of sensory bond, especially strong with children." Daniel leaned back, stunned. "You're saying Fletcher thought Max could communicate psychically?" Morgan didn't answer immediately. "Let's just say he was documenting things that defied explanation. And now your son, without being told anything, describes the man who hurt Max, even his name."
"He said Jimmy," Grace whispered, "and he drew the man, the ring, the car."
Morgan nodded. "James Mercer, Fletcher's former business partner. They had a falling out over a land deal. Mercer's now a person of interest." A long silence followed. Noah appeared in the doorway, holding a drawing. He walked over and handed it to Morgan. "It's the place where Max got hurt," he said. "He showed me last night." Morgan studied the image. A room with blue walls, a tipped-over chair, blood near a laundry sink. It matched the layout of Fletcher's utility room. Morgan's voice was low. "We haven't released any of this to the public." Noah looked down at Max, who sat calmly at his feet. "He remembers everything," the boy said simply, "and he wants to help." Morgan folded the paper and stood. "Then we're going to need to listen, very carefully." Scene 10. Max leads the way. Detective Morgan returned the next day, this time with a scanner and a fresh sense of urgency. After verifying Max's microchip, there was no doubt left. He was Officer Fletcher's dog. What had started as a simple rescue during a storm was now part of an active homicide investigation. But there was something more pressing on Morgan's mind. "I need to show you something," he said, handing Grace a photograph. It was grainy security footage from a gas station. James Mercer filling a black sedan. The same car Noah had drawn. "He's on the move," Morgan said, and we think he's circling back. We just don't know where he'll strike." Max, who had been quietly lying near the fireplace, suddenly rose. His ears twitched. He walked to the front door, sniffed the edges, then looked back at Noah. Noah stood too. "He wants to go," the boy said. "He knows where to go next." Daniel frowned. "Go? Where?"
"I don't know," Noah said honestly, "but he says it's important."
It sounded insane, but Morgan didn't laugh. He looked at Max, then at the boy. "We'll follow him." They loaded into 2 cars, Morgan in the lead with Max, Noah and Grace. Daniel followed behind. Max gave short, decisive barks at intersections. Turn left, go straight, turn again. The dog moved like a compass, following some invisible trail. 20 minutes later, they pulled into a quiet neighborhood. Max barked again, louder this time, and jumped at the door. He'd found something. Morgan motioned for silence. They approached the house Max indicated: blue paint, overgrown hedges, a partially collapsed fence. The blue house. Noah grabbed Grace's hand. "This is it," he whispered. "This is where the bad thing happened." Max growled low, his body tense. Morgan drew his weapon. "Stay back," he said. "We're going in." Scene 11. Secrets behind the door. Detective Morgan crept toward the blue house's side door, weapon drawn, eyes alert. Grace kept Noah behind her, heart hammering in her chest. Max stood beside them, tense but silent, his eyes never leaving the door. Morgan gestured for backup to flank the opposite side. Moments later, the front door creaked open under his careful push.
"Police, is anyone inside?" No answer.
They entered cautiously. The interior was dim and smelled faintly of mildew and something metallic. Blood, Grace realized with a shiver. The living room was in disarray, furniture overturned, broken picture frames, a shattered lamp. But it was the laundry room that stopped Morgan cold. Blood. Dry, smeared along the floor and sink, and more importantly, a cracked tile beneath the utility shelf pried slightly open. Morgan reached down and lifted it. Inside, a hidden compartment, folders, photographs, a flash drive. He signaled to the officer with him. "We've got something." Back outside, Grace held Noah close. Max paced. Minutes later, Morgan emerged with the items in an evidence bag. He looked stunned. "It's Fletcher's records," he said. "Everything he documented about Mercer, the money laundering, the threats, and photos. Surveillance on Mercer's warehouse. This is what Mercer was trying to hide." He turned to Max, who was now sitting calmly next to Noah. This dog didn't just witness a murder. He protected the man who tried to stop it. Grace stared at the house, shaken. "So Mercer came here after Fletcher died, to look for the files?" Morgan nodded, and he thought Max had seen too much. Noah whispered, "He did. Max remembers it all." Morgan looked at the boy. "We'll use this, and thanks to Max, we might actually bring Mercer down." Scene 12. Mercer strikes back. That evening, the Wilson house was under extra police surveillance. A patrol car sat parked across the street, its lights off but engine idling. Inside, Grace tucked Noah into bed, though he remained wide awake, one hand resting on Max's back.
"He's not finished," Noah whispered.
Grace hesitated. "You mean Mercer?" Noah nodded solemnly. "Max knows. He's scared for us." Grace kissed his forehead, unsure whether to dismiss the idea or believe it completely. Downstairs, Daniel checked the locks again. Morgan had promised increased patrols until Mercer was found, but the man had vanished. And now, with the stolen files threatening to expose everything, he had nothing to lose. At 3:14 a.m., Max stood, silent, alert. He moved to the front door and growled low.
Then a soft click.
The back fence gate. Grace jolted awake, grabbed her phone and peeked outside. Nothing. Then movement, a shadow, by the shed. Max barked, sharp and loud, then charged toward the kitchen. Daniel was already there, bat in hand. Suddenly, glass shattered. The sunroom door burst open, and standing there, soaked and wild-eyed, was James Mercer.
"You should have burned those files," he hissed.
Max lunged, teeth bared, intercepting Mercer mid-step. Noah appeared at the stairs, shouting, "Max, be careful!" But Max was already locked in combat, growling, holding Mercer at bay. Grace dialed 911, screaming the address. Daniel tackled Mercer from behind, and the three crashed into the kitchen island. Max yelped, but didn't let go. Sirens wailed in the distance. Mercer thrashed, bloodied, trying to escape, but Max held on. When officers burst in moments later, it was over. Max lay panting, side-bleeding, but victorious. Mercer, cuffed and defeated, was finally in custody. Noah knelt beside Max, whispering, "You did it, you protected us, just like you promised." Scene 13. Aftermath and a promise. Morning came slowly, ushered in by flashing red and blue lights, still pulsing outside the Wilson home. The kitchen floor was smeared with blood, Mercer's and Max's. Officers combed the area, securing the scene, taking statements. Grace sat on the floor next to Max, cradling his head gently in her lap, while a paramedic cleaned his wounds. The dog's breathing was shallow, eyes half closed, but peaceful. He didn't whimper, didn't flinch, he only looked at Noah. "He needs a vet, immediately," the paramedic said. "Possible internal bleeding. He took a hard hit." "I'm coming too," Noah said firmly.
Noah.
"No, I'm not leaving him." Dr. Patel met them at the emergency animal hospital 20 minutes later. Max was rushed into surgery. Noah waited, curled in a chair with Grace beside him, silent but wide-eyed. Hours passed. Finally, Dr. Patel appeared. "He made it. It was close, but he's strong. We repaired the damage. He's resting now." Grace let out a sob of relief. Noah just nodded, his face unreadable. They were allowed a few minutes with him. Max lay hooked to machines, but his tail wagged softly when Noah touched his paw.
"You're going to be okay," the boy whispered. "You did what you were meant to do."
He leaned closer and said something only Max could hear. Later that evening, back at home, Grace watched her son drawing quietly in the corner. On the paper, Max, standing in sunlight, healed. She joined him, kneeling. "What did you say to him, sweetheart?" Noah smiled faintly. "I told him he kept his promise. Now I'll keep mine." "What promise?" "That I'd never let him be alone again." Grace wrapped her arms around her son, tears returning. And somewhere in the sterile quiet of the recovery room, Max dreamed, not of violence or pain, but of soft hands, steady voices, and the boy who never stopped believing in him. Scene 14, a new beginning. Weeks passed. Winter melted into spring, and with it, a sense of calm returned to the Wilson home. Though the scars, physical and emotional, remained, they had begun to heal. Max came home to cheers from neighbors who had once turned him away. His limp was noticeable, but his eyes gleamed with the same warm fire that had first drawn Noah to him. Detective Morgan stopped by with news. Mercer had confessed. Between the files recovered from the Blue House and the confrontation at the Wilsons, his case was airtight. The department had quietly discussed Max's future. "He doesn't have an official handler anymore," Morgan said, "which means he'll be placed for adoption unless you've already beaten us to it." Grace looked at Daniel. Daniel looked at Noah. "We already did," she said with a smile. Max was family now. In the weeks that followed, something extraordinary blossomed. Noah and Max, inseparable as ever, began helping others. Grace reached out to a local children's hospital asking if they'd be open to visits from a therapy dog. They welcomed Max immediately. And so, once a week, Noah and Max visited kids who were scared, lonely, or in pain. Max would lie quietly beside them, his calm presence speaking louder than words, and Noah, his voice soft, his heart wide open, would sit and share their story. "One stormy night, Max found us," he'd begin. "He was hurt, but he was brave, and now he wants to help you be brave too." Somehow, the kids always understood. And when the hospital staff asked how Max always seemed to know which child needed him most, Grace simply said, "He listens with his heart, just like Noah taught him." Epilogue. On a golden summer afternoon, the Wilsons sat in their backyard. The grass was green, the breeze gentle, and Max lay stretched out on the deck, his head resting beside Noah's knee. Noah was older now, just a little, but wiser in ways most children would never understand. He stroked Max's fur thoughtfully, a journal open in his lap. He had started writing down everything, what Max had shown him, what they had lived through, and what they had learned together. Grace brought out lemonade, setting a glass beside her son. "Still writing?" she asked. Noah nodded. I want people to know about Max, about listening, about choosing kindness when it's hardest. Daniel joined them with a frisbee in hand, and Max's ears perked up. Despite the old injuries, he rose eagerly, tail wagging, ready to play. The scars didn't slow him. If anything, they made his joy more resilient. As laughter filled the yard and the sun dipped low behind the trees, Grace watched her son and the dog, who had once appeared out of the storm, two souls bound not by chance, but by purpose. Some connections defy logic, some bonds rewrite the rules, and sometimes the ones we rescue end up rescuing us. In the stillness of dusk, Max looked back toward the house he now called home. Then he turned to Noah and gently nudged the boy's hand as if to say, "We've only just begun."